May is Older Americans Month, and there's a lot of issues and concerns specifically for the elder in our community, especially right now.
Yeah, we've got Dr. Amy Kostelic, an Associate Extension Professor at UK, joining us by phone this morning to talk a little bit more about some of those topics. Thanks for chatting with us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, first tell us a little bit more about Older Americans Month and why it's observed.
Great. Well, every May, the Administration for Community Living, the ACL, leads our nation's observance for Older Americans Month. And so I'm really pleased that you invited me to talk about it because this year, especially in the midst of the coronavirus, Older Americans hold special significance. But interestingly, this annual observance dates back to 1963 with President Kennedy. And he designated May as Senior Citizens Month. That's what it was called at that time. And it's also interesting to note that in the early 60s, only 17 million Americans had reached their 65th birthday. About a third of older Americans lived in poverty, and there were few programs that existed to meet need. And so soon after Senior Citizens Month took place or took hold, President Johnson signed the Older Americans Act of 1965 into law. And this was as a response to the concerns about the lack of community and social services available to senior citizens. So if we fast forward, today we have about 52 million older Americans, and that's according to the 2018 census data, with a projection of our older Americans population to double to about 95 million by about 2060. So the Older Americans Month and Older Americans Act are really quite significant.
Wow, that's quite some history there.
No kidding. With the pandemic obviously going on right now, why is this especially important to talk about the elderly and the issues that are impacting them right now?
Well, I'm going to answer that question through the lens of Older Americans Month as well. And so the theme for the 2020 Older Americans Month is Make Your Mark. And I think that this theme, well, it was selected to encourage and to celebrate the countless contributions that older adults make to the communities. So it's all about their time and their experience, their talents, their wisdom, and the ways in which they've made their mark on their own families and friends and neighbors and the greater community. And they've done this for every day for generations. But the theme Make Your Mark also emphasizes the difference that everyone can make in the lives of older adults and in the lives of caregivers who are providing that essential support and the services for older adults and those living in long-term care. So to circle that back around to what you asked me within that theme, President Trump, his proclamation was made on May 1st. So every president, again, since Kennedy, has issued a formal proclamation during or before the month. And so President Trump gave his on May 1st. And he reminded us and did a good job of reminding us that we need to continue to protect older Americans as they remain the most vulnerable to the ravages of the coronavirus. Yeah. But that in protecting them, older adults are going to continue to face the hardships of loneliness and social isolation. So I think that's a big takeaway right now for ways in which we can make our mark. We have to remember that that older adults and people who have underlying, chronic conditions or these vulnerable populations are going to continue to be at risk until there's a vaccine.
Absolutely. If people are watching right now and they'd maybe like to find some other ways that they can make their mark, is there a website or anywhere you want to direct people for more information?
Yeah, so in particular, the Older Americans Month website, the OAM website, has a website where you can go and they provide artwork and activity ideas and all sorts of other materials that will help you observe or your communities observe Older Americans Month. And they also encourage people to share on a hashtag OAM 2020 your plans and your stories on social media. And they've got a lot of good things out there. I think sometimes we have to kind of remember it like almost like a funeral. You've got all these people who come and they bring you casseroles and they're really supportive right after the loss of a loved one, and then it kind of trails off because life goes back to, work and you're sort of normal, but the person who's been left behind stays hurting. And so I think we have to remember that as our state starts to open back up and the country starts to open back up, that we can't forget these vulnerable populations and things that we can still do to help support them and to help inspire them and inspire joy.
Very important point there. Thanks so much for joining us today, Dr. Kostelic. We really appreciate it.
Great. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.